Hello, survey researchers. Today is Valentine's Day. So it's not Valentine's Day when you're watching it, but it's Valentine's Day when I'm filming it. So I have my pink and my Valentine's Day Snoopy mug. I'm feeling all the feels. Hopefully you had a great weekend and maybe even a couple days off and are ready to start this module. This module is on research design and research questions. In just a minute, we're going to go from this view to my computer view, and we're going to take a bird's eye view at some of the readings, as well as some of the podcast and things like that. We're going to talk about what surveys and research questions looked like in those readings, and hopefully we'll be able to make some connections about how you'll be able to utilize different research questions, surveys to answer those questions, and different research designs. And with that, let's go ahead and change our view, and I'll meet you over on the computer screen. As I previously mentioned, this module is all about research designs and research questions. And so that's what we're going to go over today. Just a few things that we wanted to touch base with, some housekeeping items. So a lot of people have been applying the summarizing and synthesizing in their discussion post and things like that. But one thing that we just wanted to add to that is to make sure that you are summarizing and synthesizing across the readings, not just one reading at a time. And to maybe help this, consider using some sort of narrative or an argumentative approach. And so you're looking across the readings with maybe a critical lens or a specific question in mind, that maybe that question or that perspective is the perspective that you're looking at across all of those readings, and how are those readings addressing or not addressing those things. So that's what we mean by some sort of narrative or argumentative approach. The second thing is we just wanted to put out as a reminder that at least one synchronous meeting per semester per student is required, and that those synchronous meetings that are open to the whole group count as the meeting with Dr. Mariker. So you can either set up a one-on-one meeting with her, or you can attend one of those synchronous meetings. So we have met several people at those already, but we just want to put that out as a reminder early in the semester that if you have not come to one of those yet, consider putting one of those times on your calendar. And the last thing we wanted to mention is modifications. One of the amazing things about Dr. Mariker is that she really approaches her teaching from the perspective of what benefits the student most. And that is a really wonderful place to be and a great place to be in her class. So really make sure that the assignments that you're doing, the surveys, the topics, and those things are aligning with either your current projects or your goals. And so she says that this class should be useful to your professional development. And so this isn't like in addition to what you're doing. This should really dovetail very closely into what you already are doing. And if you need some sort of modification to the content or to the assignments, or maybe you have this project in mind and you want to see how this class can complement it, do reach out to Dr. Mariker and she will definitely work with you on how you might be able to do that. All right, so now that we have kind of talked about those things, what we're going to do is just a bird's eye view on 3 of the readings. So you have a couple of podcasts to watch, I think the Booth et al., and then there's 3 articles, and you are going to choose 2 of the 3 to read. But during this part, we're going to just take a bird's eye view of all 3 of those articles and maybe whet your appetite a little bit, or just kind of introduce you to these, and then maybe help you make a decision of which 2 stand out to you are most interesting. But more importantly, we are going to look at how surveys can be embedded in lots of different types of research designs. And it can be helpful for us to see how different authors or different researchers have used survey research to answer their research questions. So we're going to look at the first article, which was School Discipline, Police Contact, and GPA, a Mediation Analysis. And I just pulled out one of the research questions, which is childhood suspension associated with the intrusiveness of police contact experience? The survey used for this study was the Future of Families and Child Well-Being, and it was a longitudinal study. And so this survey included items that collected data through interviews with the mothers and fathers, teachers, and children at different ages. So there were interview component, and then there was a survey component. And the survey items included questions or items about the children's characteristics, such as their GPA, any contact they may or may not have had with the police, and their general demeanor, It also included family characteristics, such as a parent's education level and demographics. So that's one way a study used surveys and interviews in this case to address some of the research questions. So another example is the article Top Student, Top School, How Social Class Shapes Where Valedictorians Go to College. And this is actually, I believe this is actually a book, and we just have a couple of the chapters to read from. On the screen, the research question kind of feels maybe a little bit choppy, but if this is one of the articles that you choose to read, you'll see in the paragraph above, it provides some context about enrollment patterns. So the question makes a little more sense in that context. But there were 4 research questions, and this is just one of them. So it says, does variation in school and family knowledge of college options, college costs, and financial aid explain these enrollment patterns? So the survey that they used for this study is High School Valedictorian Project. And this survey included items about attitudes and values around attending college for both the parent and the child. And specifically attending a prestigious college. How important was that to the parent and or to the child? It also looked at how well they understood the application process and factors that influence their application process. Okay, so hopefully you're starting to see how these surveys and the types of items on the surveys are directly related to the type of question being asked and maybe different perspectives or angles to answer those questions. So this article really stood out to me because I thought it was really interesting that this study included both a control and a treatment condition. So I actually had not seen that in survey research before, and I thought that was a really interesting take. And so the 2 groups took part of the same survey, and then at some point, the survey kind of turned into 2 different surveys. And so they were able to have a control group and a treatment group in that way. So this study was called My School District Isn't Segregated, Experimental Evidence on the Effect of Information on Parental Preferences Regarding School Segregation. So again, this had multiple research questions, and I just pulled out one of them. Does providing parents with information on the local levels and consequences of school segregation affect their general attitudes or policy preferences regarding school segregation? So the survey that they used included the control and treatment condition, like I mentioned earlier, and then it had items about parents and children's general attitudes, their policy preferences, their beliefs about local segregation levels, and then, of course, demographics. So hopefully at this point, you're seeing how these readings are really highlighting the versatility of surveys as a tool for answering a variety of different types of questions. So it doesn't mean that surveys are appropriate for all research questions, but hopefully you're seeing that there are many research questions that can be answered with surveys. So now that we have seen how surveys have been used in a variety of different ways in different types of survey projects, now let's go ahead and take a deeper look at how to develop a research question. So this topic will really be addressed in that Booth et al. Reading that you'll do. And he's going to talk about going from a subject to a topic to a question. Now, I made it a little more linear and direct than he will, which you'll see when you do the reading and even as we go through the slide deck. But it does help me to visualize, that's why I have this funnel on here, that your subject is very, very big. And then it's going to funnel down to a topic, and then it's going to funnel down to a question. So we'll work these ideas out a little bit more, but I like to have that visual in mind, and perhaps that helps you too. So the Booth et al. Book is going to define a subject as the broad area of knowledge, like climate change. And then they're going to say that a topic is a specific interest within that area. But it's not as simple as narrowing your subject. It's more of an approach to your subject. So that's why I was saying I oversimplified it a little bit in this way, but we'll see through the reading that he's really arguing, or they are really arguing, that it's not just the narrowing down, it's really setting up a method to approach your subject. But eventually you will ask a question that solves a problem that ideally is of interest to your readers, or something your readers care about, a problem that they're facing, that some sort of research can address and solve. In the book, the authors lay out a 3-step process on how to develop a good research question. So there are a lot of different ideas about this. There's a lot of different methods that people talk about. This is just one way, and it's very scripted, and it's a great way to maybe start out. But just keep in mind that other people have other perspectives of how to develop a research question, and this is just one of many ways of how to develop a research question. And they really advocate that we come to this problem of developing a question with the so what in mind. So we're starting with the end in mind. Why does it even matter that this question is being asked is really what they're getting at. With that framing our thinking, they set up this 3-step process. So the first step is to name the topic. So that's like that second part of the funnel. We have our subject, climate change, but now we want to really narrow it down to that next step of the topic. And so they suggest a sentence stem such as I am trying to learn about, I am working on, or I am studying. Then we would go to step 2 and add an indirect question. So notice that I am going to, with each step, kind of fade out the previous step and bold the current step, just so that you see kind of the whole process, but hopefully it draws your attention to the next step. So for this part, you would answer, because I want to find out who or what or where or whether or why or how. And then for step 3, it's going to answer that so what question that's hopefully we kind of started with. So in order to help my reader understand how or why or whether. So let's look at what that might look like with a practical example. So for step 1, I am trying to learn about the effects of joint media engagement on cognitive development in children ages birth to 4. Step 2, because I want to find out whether parents and caregivers can mitigate the negative effects of over and early exposure to media. And then we would go to step 3 for the so what, in order to help my reader understand how their interactions can make a positive impact on children's cognitive development through joint media engagement. Okay, so this is the research question. Of course, it kind of looks more like a research statement, so we would massage it a little bit into an actual question. But it's really helping us to go through this whole process of what are we talking about? What is our topic and how can we narrow it into something very specific that will answer a question that is hopefully important to our reader. So next we're going to look at research design. So in social science research, we are often trying to answer questions about a small piece of our complex world. And there is no one correct study design. It's really going to vary by the purpose and the practical constraints, such as time and money. So on this slide, it says our research design is the plan that is suitable for answering our research questions. So of course, in this class, we are using survey research to answer our research questions. But even with that method, there are multiple different types of designs. So let's look at a few different types of designs that we can use to answer research questions. So the first thing to keep in mind is that our research design should align with our purpose. I believe it was the Nardi chapter 1, which I think was a reading a couple weeks ago, but he named 4 types of studies and we'll really focus on 3. So exploratory, descriptive, and explanatory. And again, if you want to review this, you can go back to that Nardi chapter 1. But an exploratory study, which would be an exploratory design, really seeks to develop this initial understanding of the topic. So let's just go back to climate change. An exploratory study maybe just wants to understand what is this or what are people's perspectives on it, something like that. So maybe the goal of this exploratory study is to start collecting information for a larger study that you'll do later on. So a descriptive research design, it's going to present the readers with basic information. So it's usually the demographics of the subject and it describes the issues under the study. So descriptive is really just describing. Then an explanatory study is going to answer the why question. So it attempts to explain a relationship and it uncovers the why or the how a certain phenomena occurred. Taking our joint media engagement study, we could say that an exploratory study might be that we just want to know how many parents even know what joint media engagement is? Who's even heard of it? Is it something that they can define or identify? What is joint media engagement? A descriptive study is maybe going to look at how different parents implement joint media engagement, and it's going to look at the ways that it's implemented. And an explanatory study might explain why children's outcomes in terms of language development or inhibitory control is different in groups where the parents employ joint media engagement strategies and those who don't. If you are available for our next synchronous meeting, we're going to delve into this a little bit more. So if you're curious or want to learn more, this upcoming synchronous meeting might be a great one to attend, because this is really what we're going to spend a majority of our time, is talking about these 3 different types of research designs and how you might be able to implement them. Next, I'm not really going to answer this question for you. I'm just going to set it out there for you to think about. So we've talked about research design and we've talked about research questions. So think about, how does your research design influence your research question? And how does your research question or questions influence your research design? It's important to think through this as you're choosing your research design, because these 2 things will really fit well together, and it's important that they fit well together, and they definitely influence each other. So I'm just going to set that out there for you to think about in your own research, is how is your design going to influence your question or questions, and how is your research question or questions going to influence the type of design that you choose for your study. We just have a few more things to do before we close out. And something else to consider is Trost, which is the podcast. So I believe there's 2-part podcasts that you'll watch for this module or listen to. And he says that you should be able to name your research design. But Dr. Meriker takes it one step further. She says that you should be able to name and defend your research design. And you will be able to do just that in your assignment for this week. So we'll take a quick look at it here, but also make sure that you're looking at Canvas in the syllabus for more specific details. But for this assignment, you are going to develop the parameters for your survey. And the artifact, or the thing that you will turn in, is going to be a 300 to 400 word essay. And in that essay, you are going to state the purpose of your study. So the research design, is it going to be an exploratory, descriptive, or explanatory study? The research question or questions that you would like to answer with the survey that you will develop in this class. So we are headed in that direction to write a survey, and we need to start with these research questions first. And so think about the research question or questions that you want to ask and how that will influence the survey that you will eventually develop. And then you're going to justify or defend the use of surveys in your research question. You're also going to think about the design. Why is the design that you chose the best design for this study? And then you'll write about some key features of your study, such as whom will you survey, how often, in what manner, and things like that. So hopefully just kind of getting you thinking for that direction, which we will eventually head towards. And then as a reminder, which I mentioned earlier, our next synchronous meeting is on Tuesday, February 25th, and we are making a late evening. So hopefully if you are on the West Coast, this is a good time for you. But also if you have a busy schedule and are working, hopefully this 8 o'clock time will work for you as well. So it's 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we hope to see you there. All right, that is it on research design and research questions. Hopefully we provided you with some information that kind of frames what your next tasks are, but also just gives you a little bit of a better understanding of what your tasks are, but also just how social science works and the process that researchers go through from beginning to end when they are doing survey research. So I look forward to hopefully seeing you at our synchronous meeting, if not then in another module very, very soon. I hope you have a fantastic week and keep plugging away. You're doing great. Bye for now.